Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, yWhales, wherever in the world you are today. So today is October 6th. There's a lot of big macros going on in the world. I think there's, you got oil crises, you got all sorts of issues. It's really hard to find much good news in mainstream media, and that's irregardless of what country you're in. Crypto is currently in its bear market, which is, Bitcoin's hovering right around that $20,000 stable coin it's been at for the last few months. But again, I keep coming back to innovators are innovating, builders are building, and we're really starting to see what is going to be the first iterations of the next bull. And that's why it's so important to talk to the entrepreneurs like Jenny and Michael that we have here with us today to really talk about what they're building, why, because we're going to be moving past in the entire Web3, kind of asset class, past this perception of perceived value. And we're going to be moving into this idea of real world utility. And as soon as you start getting real world utility, you create real world value. And now you've actually caused to have a real ROI on investing or being in these projects. So I want to kick it over and really understand who our guests are today. So Jenny, would you mind just kind of giving us a little bit of your background, and then Michael, we'll go to you.
Yeah, absolutely. Jenny Diggles. I live in Denver, Colorado, and my whole background, my entire career has been focused on building things in emerging markets where there's really not a good understanding of whether it's technology or a regulated industry like cannabis. It's rather gray, and that's where I've had the most fun figuring out what to build and what I'd like to do. So I've built a social media agency that was acquired by Deloitte Digital. I built iPhone app games that got me onto TV shows. And then I was in the cannabis industry for about 8 years, raising money, working actually with a lot of YPOers in building cannabis funds. And that's actually where I met Michael, and we started our journey together.
Absolutely fabulous. And Michael?
I'm a physician, but never really practiced. As my mom said, you're not a real doctor if you don't practice. And so I've never practiced. I'm kind of the same bent as Jenny, just kind of really like new technologies, really like to be involved in what's kind of happening from, as you mentioned, from a macro level, where things are going from a technology. So I put companies together, raised a lot of venture capital money, had one go public, did really well, had a bunch of failures, just like anybody else. I learned from the failures, and Jenny and I, basically met over cannabis. So here we are.
Hey, listen, it is, it's a new world, and I love hearing that. One of the things you really talked about a lot, Michael, or you just mentioned here, is the fact that there are failures in the space. Mm-hmm. And I think one of the things that's really important for anyone that's maybe spent some time or invested in the last bull and find themselves in a very disappointed position is to really take a look back and understand, what was that coin that you invested in? What was that project, and who was really behind it? Because the difference that I personally am seeing now over the last 6 to 12 months is founders like yourselves that are mature, meaning that you've done this before, you've had successes, you understand what failure is, and you understand how to mitigate that failure. But most importantly, that you are coming about this with your faces on Zoom, that you're willing to put your brand, your name, and your stamp on this. And Jenny, you more than Michael in this case, with your stamp on this. And I think that that's a really important kind of lesson or way to think about it. Have you guys found good, kind of feedback from people as you're entering the Web3 ecosystems?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I think for sure, the feedback that we've gotten, and we have not been out there kind of pushing things. We've just really taken our time putting this company together. And if I look at my what happened to me in the company and the failures that I've had, it's always been because either we did things kind of too fast, didn't really think about it a lot, and the team was not good, and this team that we put together is fantastic. I mean, it's fantastic. Even if we don't necessarily have the right business model now, although we think we do, this is a team that will be able to innovate out of it. And I've never had that before.
I love that. I always say you invest in the people and a little less in the project. So I love hearing that you guys are so excited.
And we're seeing, again, just to finish it off, and Web3, that's coming. I hear that all the time from people that want me to talk someplace or, whatever, that you guys have got something here that is, even if you don't do it, even if there isn't a token and you don't do anything with crypto, the premise of the company to use Web3 and blockchain for moving healthcare data around is really something special. And again, it's taken us a long time to get here.
Absolutely. And the development cycles, while they're very fast in the space, also are a little bit longer, because by the time you finish building something, there's been an evolution, and you kind of go from there. So, but let's dive right into exactly what JennyCo is. And I don't think there's anyone better than Jenny to talk about JennyCo. And so if you'd love to give that elevator pitch, we'd love to hear it.
Yeah, absolutely. So JennyCo is a company that we're creating an app that allows people to collect and aggregate their medical records, their personal preferences, what they're doing to take care of themselves securely and privately on a blockchain, and earn rewards for making better changes in their life and for leasing their data compliantly and securely to parties that already would like to purchase it. So currently, most people don't realize that they have a lot of data that's floating around out there that other groups are profiting heavily off of. But we see that there's a way better way for people to own that data, really make it work for them, and also receive back deep insights around their health so that they can constantly improve.
I love that. And for anyone that's listening in that may not understand how bad it is in the healthcare industry when we talk about data. Most people have heard the word HIPAA and some of these other ones. But I like to give an example of something that happened to me recently where I personally had to go in for an MRI on my neck, and doctor ordered it. And they, after the MRI, they literally handed me a CD. And they go, here. And I go, well, what do you want me to do with this? And they go, well, you have to drive it out to the doctor. And I said, you can't go online. They said, no, we're not allowed to put any of these things onto any online service in any way, shape, or form. And that was literally like a month ago. So this is an issue that exists today in this modern world where there's an app for everything and everyone's in the cloud. So I really think it's a prevalent kind of revolution that you guys are looking at making happen. Michael, when you kind of think about the best use case for this, who is it most affecting?
Well, again, I think we're benefiting. There's kind of two parts to this company. There's the user part, or the patient or client, if you will, and then there's the big company part, on this side. And so our goal is really to empower the user to be able to get really high quality information about themselves by giving us data about themselves. And then, as has been mentioned, a way of potentially getting compensation for this data, either through interactions with a large company, or through maybe their own little micro DAO, or through a bunch of different ways for them to get information about themselves by using our system, whether it's buying a test from us, whether it's doing a telemedicine consult with a dietitian, whether it's we want to have them feel like that they're getting taken care of from a healthcare standpoint, and their phone and their service on their phone is something they can trust. So we're all about trust, security, privacy. We've got a lot of experience with HIPAA and CDPR and a lot of these other frameworks that you need to put in place in order to be able to move data around efficiently. And blockchain, as far as a technology use case, we wouldn't be able to do it without blockchain. It's not possible. And the immutability and the way the data is moved around on blockchain just leads itself to some sort of HIPAA compliant solution, and that's what we're building.
Yeah, and I think that's really fascinating. And again, just as a quick reminder for anyone listening and may not understand, Web 1 was read. You can consume very well from data online. Never had been able to do so before. Web 2 was read and write, the ability to tweets, create a Facebook post, MySpace page, whatever the case was. It's not always easy to push data up into the cloud. And Web 3 is generally defined as read, write, own. The ability to have true ownership that is immutable, meaning that is irrevocable and kind of a given once verified on a blockchain, any blockchain, that this is the data that is true, it's owned, and it's verified by multiple sources. And what that does is create a really interesting, new concept because, I have medical data probably in dozens of various medical facilities all over the world.
Right.
You know,
Hundreds.
and it's being facilitated, moved, shipped. My DNA is in 23andMe, so God knows where it is. But that's a big difference. And Jenny, can you explain why it's a dynamic change from a Web 2 world to this blockchain Web 3
For
world?
sure. I mean, to me, in the Web 2 world, one of the dynamics that exists is that we were offered a lot of, quote, free services, but we were the product. And so everything that we were engaging in social media or whatever became a harvestable product by those groups. That's why they're worth so much money. That's why they make so much money. That's what they're selling is us and our data. And so to me, that shift to the Web3 world is a very dynamic shift that is now saying you are in charge. You actually have something of value that you may have not realized is of significant value. So why not claim some ownership of that and be able to use it the way that you see fit and give permissions where we want to, rather than not having an option. Like, for example, Benjamin, my husband, and I have been really complaining over the last couple of months over the number of spam calls coming through. And I'm just like, my God, like you'd think that of all things, if it says spam risk, why is it still coming through to my phone? Well, out there somewhere, you know, whether I gave my phone number into my LinkedIn account or it ended up on Zoom info, all of a sudden it's been resold hundreds of times. And so now I'm the one that has to deal with that. And so I love the Web3 world for putting power back into the hands of people in order to say who has access and who doesn't.
I think that's a really important point, you know, about, again, it's control. You've already got the data. It's already out there. So now we're just saying, how can we give you back ownership and give you back control of things? Michael, what's the biggest misconception you guys have to deal with when you're pitching this concept to people?
Well, I mean, I think it's how you pitch it too. You know, if you go in and say, we've got this great token and it's going to do X and it's going to blah, 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 it's like, okay, you know, but if we go in and say, look, we're really a personalized public health company that's giving ownership back, you know, to the user. I love that line that Jenny, you know, used about Web 2.0 is you are the product. Well, no, now Web 3.0 is the user is in control of all that stuff. Well, then they immediately get that. I mean, at least, you know, the groups that are savvy enough about Web3, you know, immediately get that whole premise. But but if they're not savvy about it, people really get the idea of, you know, we want to be your healthcare healthcare source, so to speak. You know, we want to be able to give you recommendations. We want to be able to have you connect up to this provider, buy this lab test, you know, do all these kind of things, you know, in one spot. And that's an easy thing to explain too, you know. So, you know, from the public health standpoint, which is what we're really trying to do, because, you know, chronic health in the US is a third of our GDP. A third. Yeah. You know, we're talking not billions of dollars, trillions of dollars, you know, and we want to make a dent in that, you know, and to get people to move the dial on lifestyle and get them to eat the right things and do it. The only way, and I make jokes about this all the time, but the only way to do that is to make sure there's some sort of reward mechanism in place, you know, for them. Once all that comes together and we're able to explain that, I think there isn't a group that isn't, you know, potentially interested in this.
No, it's huge. And again, I think that people really need to understand this is not a small problem. I always really, you know, I'm excited when I see entrepreneurs going after big problems. I mean, this is a global issue, that no one, you know, there's multi-billion-dollar healthcare, you know, conglomerates that have not solved this issue, and they've certainly tried. But just to give a quick frame of reference, you guys can probably, rattle the number off. What's the total, addressable size of this potential market?
Yeah, I mean, when it comes down to it, it's everybody with a cell phone. So
there you go.
That's it. You know.
Yeah.
And when we're talking, you know, in underserved communities, even in the U.S., but in Africa and Asia and whatever, you know, the only way the government can, you know, have any hope of getting any healthcare information back, you know, to the individual user. I mean, everybody's got a cell phone. You might be dirt poor, you know, and whatever, but you probably got a cell phone, and it's probably a smartphone. And so if you can get information and collect information back and give that person, you know, some sort of risk mitigation, you know, based on their healthcare, they're all for it. And so we've had a lot of outside the United States groups come to us already and are interested in doing just that for their particular population.
Yeah, the U.S. is not very friendly right now towards most blockchain technologies or tokens. We certainly are seeing quite a bit more of innovation overseas. But I look at what you guys are proposing, and it really is very advantageous, and I think it's right in line with where regulations are today. Without diving into kind of theoretical profits and all the things that we generally don't talk about on the show, can you just give an overview of the structure of kind of how you set up the company and the tokens?
Jenny, you want to do that? Or?
Yeah, sure. So something I think is really important to mention about the structure of our company is that we have a very traditional side of the business, where we have tests that are sold, we have revenue from the app, we have companies that will give us actual money to get access to the people who are in the system. And then we have the platform, which uses, tokens as a way of flowing throughout the system. So it's much easier in a way for us to use tokens than to try to go fiat, especially as we look at an international marketplace that we're dealing with right now. So the way that tokens are largely used inside of our economy is people who are using the JennyCo app, as they're updating it, as they're adding information, they're getting rewarded for that data with tokens. And then they can use those tokens and join different pools, different DAO pools, and they can stake their own tokens against different studies and earn rewards for that. Every single partner that comes to us that wants to gain access to the data of these people, they will be using tokens in order to facilitate that. So they'll have different amounts that they may be coming in with. So a partner may say, hey, we're looking for a group of 50 people with diabetes who are males between the ages of 30 and 50. And we want to do a study of them and some of what they're eating, what they're doing, whatever it may be. And so they would essentially pony up tokens in exchange for those people's data. So that's really one of the primary ways we're using it. Did I miss anything in there, Michael, that you want to add?
No, I mean, the overall structure of the company, as Jenny said, there's kind of two parts for it. There's a traditional side and there's the DAO. For people that don't know what that is, decentralized autonomous organization, right? That's basically governed by people that are in the DAO. So it's the people, it's the people, it's the commie thing, it's people are actually running the DAO. And so, which means the users or whomever we, decide to do that. And so that's a very different structure than, potentially, what typical companies do. We do have the structure of the DAO, for governance, what's called governance, but we also do have, the structure of a traditional company, when it comes to stock ownership and things like that. So it's kind of a combination of two things, put together.
Yeah, and I love that model. And just for anyone that's kind of referencing, and Michael, I'm going to disagree with you slightly on kind of is the DAO governance, kind of that structure. I'm not even going to say the name. I think it really empowers your power users, your heaviest users, to have a voice, which is something that's never happened before. And I think that's one of the biggest wins that we're going to have in Web3 is imagine that if with every Coca-Cola product you bought, you got a little Coca-Cola coin. No value. There's no intrinsic value to it. But when they came out and said, hey, please vote for what it should be the next Coca-Cola flavor be lemon lime or grapefruit, that the heaviest consumers of these products have some sort of voice. And so I really do tell you guys, I love the idea. I'm a huge DAO proponent, and I love the concept of, if you have people that are generally using your product and love your product, they should have a voice and they should be able to kind of unify. And as you say, create micro DAOs of which they're able to kind of bring this up and go through with it, instead of having, and what happens in a lot of cases, I can point right at Twitter because they're going through it right now, a board of people that have no ownership. They're not the power users. They're not the ones there, but they're making all the decisions for everyone else. And I think that what you've done, and correct me if I'm wrong, is you've kind of blended the two models. So there still is a day-to-day operational source to make sure that the company's flowing, everything's going from there. But some large, kind of roadmap decisions, you're at least getting the insight from the people that are utilizing your platform. Is that correct?
Absolutely.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. I would also add that in a way, we as an organization play a little bit of a role as a gatekeeper. So if a pharmaceutical company comes to us and is like, hey, we're looking for certain information, we want to make sure that we are giving them access in a way that is compliant, that they don't get to keep the data, that they're not, copying people's information and then just run away with it and use it again. And so we do kind of play a role there in the middle to make sure that as we have this two-sided marketplace, this two-sided business, that it works, that the bridge between the two is sound, and that it works for the people who are involved as well as the companies who are involved.
Yeah, well, yeah, and we did that on purpose. As Jenny mentioned, the kind of because whether we like it or not, healthcare, it's people trust healthcare if they feel like there's people in charge that know what they're doing. That's just a healthcare thing, and so on the structure of the company side, we have doctors involved, and we have PhDs and people that have been in the healthcare industry, that understand the compliance and understand all the intricacies of it. And it is a complicated industry, it's and legacy structures and whatever archaic, and this is a potentially big idea that we couldn't have even done 5 years ago because the technology wasn't available. We needed a layer 0 blockchain. We needed governance. We needed all this stuff to be able to do that, and it just kind of all came together, within the last year or two.
And a heavily regulated industry as well.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think there's a lot of, that's why I'm so excited about, what you guys are doing, because there's so much value. And I've heard, variations of this before. But I think your approach is very interesting in the fact that you guys do have some, revenue models built in, that you're, not just saying, hey, we're passive, push us the data and we're here for you. Talk a little about some of these offerings that you guys are doing and where in the roadmap those kind of come in.
Yeah. So we have a couple, you go ahead, Michael.
No, I mean, we basically, the user will sign up for our app, our mobile app, and the website. We know the system, the platform that we put together. And the mobile app, we have a first version of that, which is not launched, but the minimal viable product of that would be in the next month or two. So if you want to call it an alpha or a beta or whatever, that's going to be available, for users. In this app and on the website, you'll be able to give us data. We'll be able to take that data and help make recommendations for you about certain things, whether it's food or exercise or surgery or whatever, whatever we decide that is potentially useful, with doctor's oversight in there. You'll have the ability to talk to a doctor if you want, or a pharmacist or whatever. And so that kind of capability, that the initial capability won't be all built out, to everything that will be like, but it will have enough capability in there to keep the users engaged. And then they have the ability to buy things on there too. Do they need a vitamin D test, or do they need a DNA test? We will have that ability for you to do that, through our Shopify accounts. And so we're doing deals with large lab companies and DNA companies, and people that want to be in our system, not just on the laboratory side, just for us to be able to provide the tests, but they're also interested in the data. They're interested in the data that we generate that links into these potential, lab tests and what that actually means. So there is a component of the large companies that are talking to us that they're interested in mining the data too. Everybody's interested in mining health, and healthcare data means a lot of things now. It can mean credit card information. It can mean, what floor you're living on. Do you live in a smoggy city, or do you walk to work? All that stuff means something. Right. And so the AI component of this, machine learning component, and that's kind of the industry I come out of, is very interesting, to be able to build something like that. It's also kind of blockchain.
Yeah. And I mean, the great thing about blockchain is just that removing of friction from anywhere in the world. There's no, and you said it before, there's no currency exchanges, and it's subtly, I can turn on Zoom anywhere in the planet and it just works. Say I want to send money to anywhere on the planet, and it starts getting pretty complicated, or kind of sending data in a variety of sources. One of the things I think is really interesting that you touched on a second ago, Jenny, is telehealth. I think that, we're going to be seeing a dynamic change with the younger millennials and the Gen Zers, that they just go, yeah, there's something wrong, but I'm not going to go anywhere. And we've also seen kind of sometimes you can't go anywhere. How does that fit into your guys' what you guys are building, and how's that work?
That's a pretty, we really want to have telemedicine as an option within the app. So if people do need to access something or get some advice, they can easily do it. I think that going to the doctor has always been kind of a scary thing. Like even just going in for a checkup, it's like, oh no, is something going to be wrong? Or even the process of going into the doctor's office can be so irritating. You're waiting for forever. You're sitting in a room. Somebody comes in, talk to you for 5 minutes. They're like, what do you need? And they leave. So, that's the worst case example. But I feel that by giving people more consistent access to telemedicine and other options for specialists, it will empower people that if something seems slightly off, to actually just take the step right then. They don't need to get in the car. They don't need to find a doctor. They can do it all through the app. And so I feel it will empower people to start making choices earlier and changes if needed. And so, yeah, we really want to integrate with telehealth within the app to make it as easy as possible.
Yeah, and the information flow is also bidirectional. The docs are interested in getting this data that we're collected, and maybe it's streaming in front of him while he's talking, to the patient. Maybe you get a blood pressure result, or how many steps did you do, or what did you eat, or blah, blah, blah. That's all used for information from the physicians or the pharmacist or whomever you're talking, dietitian, whomever you're talking to, are interested in that stuff to help the patient as well. So, we have a way. We think we have a way of being able to collect a lot of very valuable, dynamic. I read a paper the other day where they're able to predict now whether you're going to get Alzheimer's disease if you're paying your credit card payments. And there's some algorithm. That's I was astonished. I haven't paid my credit card in like 25 years, and so I probably have Alzheimer's, right? You know what I'm saying? It's just like, who would have thought? I guess the thought probably, who would have thought that was even possible? But it is. There's just a lot of things now mean have some meaning within your wellness. How you do how your body's.
Yeah, and I think that you bring up a really good point. And so while we're on the topic of kind of like personal health, my favorite thing is you walk into any ER, and generally there's a reason you're going into an ER, and they start asking you questions. Are you allergic to anything? I don't think so. What are you about to give me for my issue of which I'm having a problem with? And so these are the problems that, emergency rooms and everything else are, have code issues all the time. When someone just does not know they are allergic to something, it's in a chart somewhere in a doctor's office. But for those of us that are, kind of Gen X and really Gen X and older, all of our childhood medical data is gone. Gone. Any issues that we could possibly think of that could have been those precursors to a serious disease later in life, that even using AI, even using the most amazing amounts of data, is just poof, gone. You're never going to find it. Hopefully you have a folder in your house with it, because if you don't, you can go back to the hospital you were born in, and they're going to be like, here's the date and time. That's all we got. Any issues that were surrounded, any files about the time you broke your leg when you were 5 years old, no idea. And so I think that what you guys are really proposing is something that is critical for the longevity of the human species, which is the fact that you like this. I'm not an investor.
I'm going to use that one. Yeah.
It's our new tagline.
That's a new
disclaimer.
tagline.
Yeah. Disclaimer. I'm not an investor. I have no monetary. Yes. There you go. We've ruined the podcast club here. So, but the point that I'm getting at here, and I really want to make sure I understand, is the thought that all of my data, whether it's I took a couple Advil, on a I want to put in that I'm taking 2 Advil a night because I'm going to sleep with a headache, or some issue that I had a couple of years ago. But it all should be able to be scanned by AI, today or in the future, like you said, Jenny, to find some of these precursors that we may not know, but we know it's coming down the pipe. And for those of us that do pay our credit cards every month, Michael, but do have a history of Alzheimer's or dementia in our family, anything that we could do to help us not only know what's coming, but to help find relief or cures really is a priority.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. For myself, a couple of years ago, I went through, I had a doctor I was seeing, and She was fabulous. She actually had me do a series of rather in-depth tests. I mean, everything about me was pretty much tested, my DNA, my blood, everything. And I thought, when I went to her, I thought I just may have had a vitamin D deficiency. I was just feeling a little off. And what she found within that was that I have a couple of genetic mutations, and one of them doesn't allow me to methylate, which means that I can't process even like a regular B12. My body doesn't do anything with it. But the one that was really detrimental to me was that I don't have a gene that allows me to process heavy metals. So I can't produce an antioxidant called glutathione. So
Mm-hmm.
with that, my heavy metal rates were out of control, which was leading to these feelings of anxiety, tiredness, brain fog. And she immediately got me onto a protocol that allowed me to eliminate those heavy metals from me. And I felt so different. I was like, wow, if I hadn't known this, what would have happened? And eventually what happens if people don't identify that is they end up with what they think may be ALS or these other degenerative diseases that all stem from metal just being locked in the brain and not being able to fire properly. So the body stops working. I'm like, wow, this is really incredible. And it was such a simple thing. I just take a supplement now. That's it. Like, no big deal. So if people can have better data and insights about themselves, I believe that with that, we can actually make choices. It's hard to make a choice if you don't have information. Otherwise, it's kind of a spray and pray. I don't know. I think these things are good for me. I think I might need this. So to empower people, I think is a big deal. And then people own those decisions rather than a doctor saying to you, you have to do this because I think it's the right thing. I was able to see for myself, wow, if I don't do this, I can see where this road ends. So I really want to empower people to know themselves a whole heck of a lot better.
Michael, how are you, not you, going to protect users' data? How are, when people are concerned about things online, and one of the reasons that most healthcare have not put this data online is because they can't guarantee, that it would be compliant with HIPAA and be safe. So that's why they hand me the CD-ROM, because even then they know most likely I don't own a disk drive to even read the disk, which was the problem in and of itself.
The hell is a disk drive?
Yeah. So it's like hand me a floppy disk and it's guaranteed safe. But Michael, how are you guys managing to ensure that your platform is safe and secure, that the data does stay where it's supposed to be?
Yeah, so we do have a public alliance with Arizona State with their blockchain group, and they are world class. This is Dragon and his group, and they have built in partial. They have built a HIPAA compliant blockchain solution, the only one that we know of that also can use layer 0. So we've got kind of two components, to this, to ensure that we're getting the right data. And then the blockchain, because it's HIPAA compliant and CDPR, and have certain permissions, on it that are healthcare, related. And being a blockchain, the data that once it moves through there is immutable. And you as the user, that'll be explained, obviously. And so the privacy and security components also include the ability of the user to delete anything that they want to delete. So if you want to delete all your data, boom, it's gone. You have that ability to do that. So the system is in place, and then the storage of a third of all data generated on a daily basis is healthcare data. So, that's exabytes and exabytes. I don't even know. It's so much. I read a paper the other day that claims that healthcare data, all healthcare data, now doubles every 3 days. It used to be 3 months, 10 years ago. Now it's every 3 days. There's so much generated, right? So, the cloud storage and whatever also has to be, HIPAA compliant, CDPR compliant, FIFA rules, whatever. So we got all that built in there. And again, as you know, there's nothing more regulated than healthcare, but because of the ability to have a blockchain that's decentralized, that really, helps with the idea of security and immutability, which you mentioned earlier.
Love that. So, Jenny, as you kind of look at growth and expansion and adoption, where's the first places that you're gonna start trying to get adoption? Who's the first users that really will benefit right off the bat from this platform?
It's really interesting because we're launching inside of this crypto Web3 space. We obviously have a whole pool of people who are very interested in the project because of that lens. But as a team, since we recognize this is much bigger than just that group, how do we start to talk to and find the other appropriate groups? So one of the angles that we're actually taking is looking at orphan diseases. And what orphan diseases are, there's a whole collection of things that just don't get a lot of attention, but there are a lot of people in this country who struggle with them. So what we're going to do is really try to start going after a lot of these groups that have these orphan diseases, bringing them in so they can start to find support and community among each other. And then we also have, because of this alliance that Michael mentioned with Arizona State University, that's the largest university in the United States. I think there's, 100,000 students there, something like that.
More, yeah.
And so, yeah, I think it's even more, 120. And so that's also another launch pad for us, is looking at college students. They're a group of people who are so comfortable using their cell phone.
Right.
They're comfortable sharing data, and they also need money. They want to earn, they want to, make something for what they're contributing and doing. So, we're looking at a couple of groups to get started. And as we really look at this grow, we feel that, like Michael said very early on, this applies to everyone with a cell phone. And ideally, what I would love to see is that there are people who are using this app and they're getting direct value out of it that's impacting their health, their day-to-day, and even what they could be earning if they want to go that route. And they don't even need to know that there's blockchain involved or that it uses, cryptocurrency, that they're just stoked that their stuff's there and they feel safe about it. So we're really going after, I would say, a very mass market approach. But we definitely are, we have a lot of the Web3 crypto people who are very interested in this as well.
And I agree that the technology blockchain should just be invisible. So I like that the fact you have this approach versus you're not saying, so you're going to download a MetaMask wallet, then you're going to go on Ethereum, and then we're going to do some DeFi exchanges, over to a layer zero, and then finally up to, so
we have like 15 users then, it's just too hard.
And then you're Decentraland with 30 average users a day. Yeah. Michael, where's your biggest challenges that you see technologically that you've got to overcome, really before JennyCo can kind of get that mainstream adoption?
I think getting the obviously the blockchain, we have all the pieces in place for us to be able to build that, right? And layer zero is really important. The state channels, when that's available, that's another technology that is super important for us. So each one, I think if you look at the big picture, we're not inventing new physics here. We're just taking a bunch of pieces from a bunch of different places and kind of putting it all together, into a system. And a lot of these pieces have already been verified in their own little area. And we know what the rules are. We know what the HIPAA, we know all that, those kind of things. And so we're building stuff that we have a very good feeling for will pass the test, so to speak, pass the regulatory test, pass the security test, pass the privacy test, pass Math 24 in college, whatever test that we have to pass. In order to, we're getting physicians involved. We're getting healthcare personnel. We're getting groups of physicians that know that the most valuable data in all of healthcare is outcome data. It's like, did this food work? Did the drug work? Did this? And the physicians are sitting on a lot of that. The average physician practice in the U.S. single practitioner has about 1,300 patients, in his database. It's a lot of information. And he knows that maybe for this guy, drinking Pepsi-Cola worked for his diabetes, although it's unlikely, but for this guy it worked. For somebody else, there's no way, and, the insurance companies have all put out data about that. If you look at every outcome, all healthcare outcomes, it's about 30 to 40% based on your genetics and about 60 to 70% based on lifestyle, period. Can't do anything about the genetics, but you can do things for your lifestyle that revolve around changing how the genes are turned on and turned off and what they actually do, right? And that's kind of part of the methylation thing that Jenny talked about earlier. This whole idea of doing something, impacts your own DNA is very validated.
Yeah, I think I'd add to that. One of the other technological things that is a big lift, but I think one of a very key component is our machine learning and AI within the app.
Yeah.
And, that is the kind of thing where we want it to be excellent. We want someone to feel like they are getting such personal recommendations that are impacting them that they look forward to opening it up to see like, well, what else can I add to it so that it might be giving me even better insights to myself. We really want to own that in-house. We want to keep that something that's very important to us. So we're not, outsourcing that aspect of what we build, because it feels really critical in terms of how people will feel they're engaging and getting feedback
Yeah,
from the app.
that's a really good point. And another point is that we know from what's published in the literature and whatever that individual users actually trust what they get from their technology more than they trust the doctor. That's just the way it is. And especially generation, whatever as Generation Z and Z1 or whatever, they just would rather get stuff on their device.
They'd rather trust WebMD than the actual doctor.
Right. And I hear that from my doctor friends. I have real doctor friends all the time. I don't have any, people that I'm in competition with. My competition is Dr. Google. Right. Or Dr. X or Dr. It's basically the internet, and how reliable that potential information is. And so we want people to feel like that what we're giving them is really reliable.
Awesome. Really, again, I'm really impressed with what you guys have done. I think that what you guys have built has big implications for the world, and obviously now the hard work is done. You have the concept, you have the framework, you got to go build this thing, and it's going to take time, energy, and quite a bit of capital. But with that being said, your focus is very clearly on this. But there's always other macros. There's a lot of things that are happening in the world that can distract you, regardless of whether you do everything perfect or not. Michael, what's your kind of thoughts around where Web3 or anything kind of in general is going right now?
Yeah. So obviously a very provocative question. I mean, it's not going away. Number one. And number two, I hear this over and over again from people that are in the Web3 space, from either venture capitalists or, people that are running conferences or whatever. They look at the projects, not just ours, but the projects that are coming out that actually have real utility, and real use cases and real potential monetization cases as the projects that are going to win. That was not the case 5 years ago, or whatever.
It wasn't the case 5 months ago.
5 months ago. Yeah, I was trying to be kind.
There's a lot of pictures of monkeys out there that
I was going to say that too, but I'll leave that up to you.
Yeah.
As you again mentioned earlier, healthcare is very provocative, right? It is the biggest, potential area in technology that is ripe for innovation, for a way to use all these fancy digital technologies, if you will, and benefit the user. So that's not me making this. This is what I hear over and over again, from. So that's my alpha drop, if you will.
There you go. Good information. Jenny, any deep thoughts or go for it.
I feel like we are at a really important time in the Web3 world. I feel like we have seen a lot of companies, projects, tokens come out that really aren't tied to anything. I mean, the 2018 number of ICOs that happened was insane. And the number of projects that still exist is very small. But where we are now is, to echo what Michael said, I feel that we are in a time where people need to see that the company that is using this technology, that is issuing a token, actually has a real business, that it has a real business model that is real in the world. It's not this airy-fairy out there kind of just in the web. And it has some meaning. But all these things that people have done to this point still matter. They have paved a road that makes it a little bit easier for us to go down and learn from other people. Even all the pictures of the apes out there, I think of that like Beanie Babies. As soon as that all thing, I was like, oh, this is just like Beanie Babies, where people get really hyped up about owning the Princess Diana Beanie Baby bear. And then you fast forward and it's worth nothing, but it played a role. And, so that technology will play a role for us as well, potentially not in terms of, pictures of apes. But I feel we're at a really pivotal time. I feel that a company that can be born in the bear market is going to be a stronger company moving forward than those that were born in the very soft, fluffy, very overly, pumped era. So I'm really proud that this is where we're heading, and that the feedback we're getting is that people want to use the product, that it's not just about the token or the blockchain.
Yeah, it's interesting about your bear market content. Do you know that the 5 big companies, Amazon, Apple, Google, Microsoft, Facebook, all of them were founded in a bear market? All of them. Mm-hmm. Right?
It is the maelstrom of innovation. It's generally when a lot of layoffs happen, meaning people are out of work. The developers don't sit around and play video games. Shockingly, they just start building. They start innovating. They start thinking of things. And when you put a bunch of developers in a room together with no perceived function or no perceived notion of what structure should they do, they just want to build cool stuff. You actually get cool stuff versus when you put them in a room, pay them, and say, I want you to build this because it's the highest ROI that we can possibly get in the shortest amount of time. And so like I said, I'm excited to see where this goes. You have a massive technical lift that you guys are going to have to do. And I'm glad you got 120,000 ASU students that are going to knock it out for you. But when people want to know more, they want to, kind of try it out. And like I said, I volunteered. I'll give you some DNA and we'll see how it goes. Preferably a little spit is there, not some blood. Where can people find you guys?
So our website is JennyCo.com. So that's where kind of the main hub of everything is. From there, there's links to all of our social, you name it. If it exists up there, we probably have a profile. So I think that's really the main place people can go to find out more about us. If anyone wants to reach out to me personally, my email is just jenny@jennyco.com. And so maybe I shouldn't be putting that out on the internet, but I don't mind. There you go. This will be,
more spam for you.
Yeah, more spam for me.
You couldn't use your phone now. You won't be able to use your email.
My work email's got to change. Yeah.
Yeah. So same thing. My email is just michael@jennyco.com. She's the Jenny in JennyCo, by the way. Yeah.
I figured as much. Guys, I want to say thank you so much for swinging by. Really, it's fascinating to hear. We've talked to a lot of people that are in healthcare and blockchain, Web3 type technologies, and I think that you guys have a very interesting value proposition, and you're really doing a lot to empower users to really control their data. So I think it hits one of our core fundamentals, which is ownership of your data online and the ability to kind of have control over these things. So I applaud you guys, and really we'll be watching over the next few years to see how this goes mainstream. So for yWhales, this is JennyCo with Jenny and Michael. We'll see you guys next time.
Thank you.